Right, we're doing a Premier League tier list of all the Premier League sides. We're going to rank them between superb and massively embarrassing. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. We're going to start off in the deep end with Luton Town. I'm a massive fan of Rob Edwards. I'm a massive fan of how Luton Town have structurally been able to achieve success throughout the lower levels of English football into the Championship. They've maintained success there, even been in and around the playoffs before they got promoted the season before. And then they got promoted and they've represented the Championship in the best light, better than Sheffield United, who are obviously a bigger club with all due respect, and of course Burnley, who have been in the Premier League for quite a few years in the last decade. Both those sides have been absolutely shocking. We'll talk about them later in the video, but Luton Town can hold their heads up high. If they get relegated, they can be massively proud of what they've done this season. Rob Edwards as a young coach is very, very exciting. He's got a bit of the Gary O'Neill about him in terms of how he gets his side playing, not only defensively conservative football. He limits the chances of other sides, even the Liverpool's and the Arsenal's and the Man City's that are rocked up at Kenilworth Road. But he actually gets Luton Town playing. There are some standout players for me. Ross Barkley's been a great signing, and if there's one jewel in the crown, it reminds me a little bit, it sounds ridiculous, when Blackpool signed Marlon Harewood. I know it's a bit random. Obviously, they had Charlie Adam in midfield as well, but that Blackpool season where they were so close to staying up until the final day of the season against Man United, I think it was, that is a very comparable season for me. This Luton Town side are going to have to gamble on one of the Brentfords of the world, who are in way worse form than Luton Town. Maybe Bournemouth have a weird wobble. Everton have had those 10 points deducted. That's the only way that they're going to stay in the league, in my opinion. One of those big boys drop out, but they're representing themselves incredibly well. And the likes of Adebayo has been superb. Doherty at left back, I think maybe been their best player in the whole season. His crossing ability is absolutely superb. I think Luton Town deserve to stay in the Premier League, and I think their season so far has been absolutely great. Right, and moving on to Tottenham Hotspur. They started off the season incredibly well. James Maddison's been a revelation. Obviously, Mickey van der Ven. Upon recording, they've not played football for a long time. And I think Spurs have steadied the ship. I actually think an underrated result for them, which is literally this weekend that's just gone, is winning in the FA Cup. They have to go and try and win an FA Cup. They lost early to Fulham in the League Cup this season. Ange Postecoglou is not going to be judged, in my opinion, based on outclassing Jurgen Klopp, outclassing Guardiola. His repertoire, his achievement in English football, especially with Spurs, will be about that first FA Cup. Guardiola, it took him a year to do it. Conte didn't win anything. Jose Mourinho didn't win anything at Spurs. Spurs have got a massive opportunity to win those cup competitions, especially if Liverpool and City are fighting out in the Premier League in the back end of the FA Cup season. And obviously, the other sides around them are struggling as well. So Spurs have to be looking to win the FA Cup. In the league, it's been decent, no questions about that. And Son in particular last week was absolutely superb. So Son, Richarlison's clicking. We're not going to talk about Timo Werner in this video, but I will if you want me to. I think it's an underrated season. I know they had that wobble. They couldn't pick up a win in 3 or 4. And you can't be that reliant on James Maddison, especially if he's a new signing. Because what if James Maddison was fit but wasn't as electric as he had been? Then Ange Postecoglou's philosophy would still be in the mud a little bit. So they have to find workarounds when James Maddison, Mickey van der Ven aren't fit. And I think almost they have in the last couple of weeks. I still think they've got good pace. They bomb forward, maybe a little bit naive. But again, it's not about being this subtle, ingenious football club, because Spurs are perennial bottle jobs. They are. And if Ange Postecoglou can bring a bit of that success that he's seen at Celtic in the Australian League, bring that on some level, then that's where the season is going. I'm going to put them in okay for now. We're going to talk about Wolves. I have to be completely real. I'm in love with Wolverhampton Wanderers. It's because I'm in love with Gary O'Neill. I think he's got the ability to be a future top 6 manager. I do. I think he's got the ability to be an England manager, because ultimately Wolves and Bournemouth were never sides, in my opinion, especially when Bournemouth were fighting for their lives in the back end of last season when they were going to the Emirates, and they were playing out. They were playing quality football. So when he got sacked from Bournemouth, I wanted Bournemouth to get relegated because I think they misunderstood the point. I know he's a little bit more conservative than Iriola, but he does allow his sides to go forward. Look at Cunha for Wolves. Look at Hwang for Wolves. Semedo as well. Ait Nuri, unbelievably attacking players. They have a base, which is a back five. I think Kilman's been a revelation. I think Craig Dawson, obviously his second season there, has been fantastic. Even the keeper. And I think all of those players that I've mentioned, especially Huang, didn't have the best goal scoring record. Cunha as well. Gary O'Neill's turned these guys into really effective and sharp finishers. Aggressive. Their home record. They got some big results. They obviously beat Man City this season. But you're looking at, wins against Spurs, Chelsea, Everton as well. They're really good at home. And Molineux is an underrated stadium. It really is. It's a bit of a fortress, especially, when Wolves were in the Championship. And it's a really, really hard place to go. And he's made that a fortress in the Premier League, which is testament to Gary O'Neill with his second ever job in the Premier League. It's almost his second ever year in Football Manager at the highest level. Gary O'Neill, if it was on this tier list, would be above superb. He'd be in a celestial body of how high I'd rank him. Seriously, I'd ordain the guy because I think he's been absolutely fantastic. He represents himself so well. He represents himself as a manager in the way he used to play. A hard-working, humble midfielder with a lot of quality on the ball. That is Wolves. We talk about the Guardiolas and all these top-level, Zidane, how Zidane got Real Madrid playing a little bit like he did, maybe with a little bit of flair and all that. And Gary O'Neill almost gets Wolves playing like how he used to play. An industrious midfielder. So Wolves are absolutely fantastic. They're on the same points as Billinquid Chelsea Football Club. Why can't they go on a run and maybe have a go into the European positions? The fact that he's taken over Wolves and Lopetegui said, I can't do this, is testament to Gary O'Neill in a massive, massive way. So I have to put Wolves, the first club to get in the superb bracket. Right, let's talk about Arsenal. They obviously came runners-up last season. They spent a load of money on Havertz, Jurrien Timber. Obviously not going to criticise him for getting injured, but he's a player that's not been able to come in and influence things for unfortunate reasons. So some of the transfers that have come in haven't quite worked out. Eddie Nketiah wasn't really moved on when I think he should have been. Rob Holding was. And there's a few players that you think, could Arsenal have gone out and been a bit more ambitious in the transfer market? I think the Kai Havertz signing is almost a nail in the coffin on some level because he has to play football because of his age, because of his name. He's still a big name in football. He has to play when he's fit. He has to play these games. And when he plays these games, he makes Arsenal less offensive-minded, less clinical, less ruthless, more languid, more lethargic, doughy, a little bit soft around the middle, like the Pirelli man. So that's what I think Kai Havertz brings to Arsenal. I'll be completely real. Yes, he's popped up with some goals here and there. I think it was was it Luton Town? I think it was last minute. Yeah, he's got that in the locker, a little clunky finish here and there, and he might be a decent substitute if Arsenal get to a Champions League final, semi-final. Will they? Will they really? Arteta's greatest sin this season is not revolutionising Arsenal more than Man City were able to be revolutionised, because he's always been semi-copying Guardiola. He has been. And Arsenal are a football club that deserve their own image. I just talked about Wolves. Wolves have got their own image. Bournemouth got their own image. They got their own element of physicality. They got their own set pieces. They got their own style of play. And I think Arsenal copy way too much from Man City. When Man City went to a back four with four centre-backs and kept it very narrow, but very physical, four centre-backs playing in a back four, almost unheard of. Obviously, Arsenal followed suit and it worked very well. I think Arsenal will be culpable of not being progressive enough this season to stay one step ahead of Man City, to bring in players that aren't obvious. I think Kai Havertz almost felt like an obvious Arsenal signing. Ex-Chelsea is a kind of name attached to the Chelsea success. Obviously winning the Champions League. Zinchenko won the Premier League with Man City. So did Gabby Jesus. I think Arsenal needed to be even more left field to stay ahead of the curve, and that's quite an abstract idea. But the results in the last few weeks have been absolutely shocking for Arsenal. How can you be top around Christmas and then fall off to that degree? I've obviously covered it to death on this channel. And I've enjoyed doing so. But Arsenal really, is it the Arsenal? Does it remind you of the Arsenal? Does it remind you of Emmanuel Petit in midfield, Tony Adams at the back, Ian Wright up front, Thierry Henry, Anelka? These absolutely fantastic players that maybe they don't exist anymore, but this Arsenal side do not have those characteristics. If you're going to be boring, you have to be ruthless. We're getting 3 points, and Arsenal don't have that ability. So in my opinion, there has to be more of a progressive thought of how we're going to go out and attack games and get goals and be ruthless. And for me, sticking Havertz up front, I know it's the FA Cup game in particular I'm talking about, but it sends the wrong message for me to the Arsenal fans and to what Arsenal are about under Mikel Arteta. I think they're having, do you know what? I think they're having a poor season. I think they should be doing a lot better than getting smashed at home in the FA Cup to Liverpool. We played a load of 16, 17-year-olds, a few of them. They beat Man City. That's progress. They're making DVDs about it. They were selling outside their shop, Finsbury Park Station. And they're below Man City in the league. Make it make sense. Bournemouth, let's be real, I wanted Bournemouth to get relegated. I wanted Brighton to get relegated when they sacked Chris Hughton after he kept them up. I'm a bit of a loyalist in that regard, maybe. A little bit antiquated. But the reality of the situation is Iriola's turned things around in a big, big way. They're basically safe. They're 5 wins off being safe. They're 25 points. Only 3 points behind Wolves, who I was praising massively. Only a few points behind Chelsea. Bournemouth. It's crazy. I think, Dominic Solanke's got 12 goals in 19 appearances. It's Harry Kane levels. I mean, Iriola's turned Dominic Solanke into Alan Shearer. Let that sink in. It's absolutely surreal what Wolves are doing. You have to shout out a couple of the players that they've signed from the Championship. Semenyo, Alex Scott from Bristol City, 2 very exciting young players, especially Alex Scott, and he's now playing in the base of midfield for Bournemouth. He's running the game in some of these results for Bournemouth, and they've been absolutely superb. Him keeping them up for a year is the success for Bournemouth. I'm going to give them great. They're not done yet. I'm low-key hoping for a little wobble, but there they go. Everton, they can't go in the superb or great category because of ethical reasons. They cheated, so they've been deducted 10 points. Despite the 10-point deduction, they've looked really decent. Actually, as I say that, going into the last few weeks, they've picked up some really poor results. So it's a mixture where I think in that end of November, December period looked fantastic. Making up the points, they would have been in the European positions, I think, with 10 extra points at that stage in the season. Now they've lost some games, a few here and there, so they're just above relegation places. I think they'll be fine. I think it's okay. I think it's a little bit boring. Dwight McNeil's having a good season. Branthwaite at centre back will be going for 100 million quid to Man United. Mark my words, clip this video. So I think it's okay all in all, and we're going to put Everton in the okay category. Nottingham Forest, they made the big decision to sack Steve Cooper, who must be on some level an icon in the Midlands because of getting a side like Forest back into the Premier League. When I was a kid, they were League One fodder, let's be completely real, and they were. So he's done incredibly well. Nuno is a better manager than Cooper at this level, and not only this level, but in terms of making them rugged. This Forest side resembles the Wolves side that Nuno did so well with. This isn't him going to Spurs and having to be a Hollywood side. Nottingham Forest don't have to be Hollywood. They can be efficient, and if their owners see 3 points, 3 points, 3 points, and them 8, I don't think the owners care about the brand of football at this point. So he's a little bit early in his development with Nottingham Forest than maybe Spurs wanted with the brand of football that they wanted. I think it's good. I think Alanga's been a fantastic signing, revelation. The kind of win against Man United, so that some of those standout wins are there this season. Sometimes you can stay in the league and just pick up enough points, and you don't have the memories and there are some sides guilty of maybe getting relegated without having those big performances still. That's why I think Luton in particular will have still a memorable season, even if they get relegated, unlike Burnley and Sheffield United, because at least they fought, at least they believed they could get out of it a little bit. And Nottingham Forest have added that this season, the win against Man United. And they seem a little bit more secure than last season at this point in the season. So I think they'll stay up. They have to get rid of their keeper, though, Turner. I think he's absolutely rubbish. We're going to put Forest in okay. Crystal Palace, I have to give them... It's around okay to poor, because I think sticking with Roy Hodgson is just so risk adverse at this point in his life, with all due respect, that it's just like you're praying that he doesn't go into a retirement community. That's what you're praying, that he doesn't make the decision to finally hang up his managerial gloves or whatever you call them. So Elise coming back was a revelation. I think he's got an injury now again. Mark Gahey and Anderson have been absolutely superb. If you can build a side around those two, I think they'll be absolutely fine this season. But they are lingering a little bit too close for comfort for Palace fans. I still think it's a failure of ownership from Parish, which I don't say lightly, because I do like Steve Parish. I think what he's done with Palace is absolutely superb. But is there not really enough money to replace Jordan Ayew? Is there really not enough money to get Matete as a squad player? Because I don't think they're good enough. I really don't. Richards in midfield, is that good enough? It feels like Palace are just being a little bit cheeky this season, maybe realising that the big transfer isn't needed yet. Obviously, they've got a bit of money coming in for Zaha, or at least his wages off the books. Did they really make that big name signing? Maybe giving Elise a big contract was the make weight. But I think Palace are in need of some big investment in that starting 11. I think they're in need of investment of a big manager that can fulfill the energy needed at Palace to keep them up every single season. Because at the moment, it just feels like every day is a ticking clock. With all due respect, I'm not trying to degrade Roy Hodgson's lineage in football, but I think Palace need a lot more vitality to stay in the league. So we're going to put them in. I'm actually going to put them in poor. I know it's harsh, but I think you want a little bit more from Palace. Liverpool, what do I have to say about these guys? The fact that Jurgen Klopp can transition in midfield away from the Henderson, the Fabinho, the Keitahs, the Oxlade-Chamberlains, all these players that have been around, Firmino, they've been around for so long and they've won everything at the club. And then for any manager, let alone a manager with the pressure of being the Liverpool manager, having to bring in Dominic Szoboszlai his first time in the Premier League, McAllister making the first big step up into the midfield for Liverpool out of Brighton, losing James Milner. There's a lot of transition there. And I think the fact that Jurgen Klopp not only kind of kept a lid on it, made Dominic Szoboszlai individually better, Alexis McAllister individually better. I think Diaz coming back from injury as well has been superb. Managing the Salah transfer, which obviously lingered at the back end of the transfer window, absolutely superb. It's a miracle job. There's not many managers that could do what Klopp does and then instill a philosophy. It's not just about getting Szoboszlai and McAllister playing instantly, because I feel like they've instantly arrived. They've instantly arrived to a very, very high level. And then it's not only that, getting them in the top 4 race or getting them just scraping through the FA Cup or whatever, but smashing Arsenal in the FA Cup, getting Quansah to an unbelievable level, getting Van Dijk back to his best, and now they're top of the Premier League. And obviously, the amount of sides that win the Premier League after being top around this kind of time is very, very high. Liverpool have given themselves a huge opportunity to be the winners of the Premier League. Who would have thought that? I actually did on this channel. I'm not gonna be too up my own ass about it, but I did think Liverpool early on would be a massive, massive threat, and they literally are. So we're going to put them in superb. As much as I hate to say it, I think they're going to be real rivals to win the Premier League. Sheffield United, if you double their points from now until the end of the season, they'll get 18 points. It's one of the worst points averages we've ever seen in the league. I don't discredit Heckingbottom. I don't discredit Chris Wilder. I think that managerial appointment is probably the one benefit that Sheffield United have had in a long time, because it will steady the ship when they get relegated, with all due respect. He obviously picked up a win on his first day in charge. Fodringham in goal, shocking. Hamer, decent. D'Souza, decent. I'm really clutching at straws. This is all relative, this tier list as well. I think if Sheffield United were even 16th, 17th, I would have put them in superb based on what they're doing. And I'm not saying that is easy. I don't think any of those players would play for a rival Premier League club, with all due respect. Maybe Hamer. But apart from that, I'm going to have to put them in embarrassing. It's really bad. It's not the fans' fault. It's not the club. It's the owners. What the owners have done, I don't know enough about the intricacies of Sheffield United, and if there's real financial issues there, then I can only sympathise on some level. I've seen it at my own club before the takeover, but you still have a duty of care. When you get promoted, you get X amount of money coming to the club. I think there's a duty of care to maybe not sell your best player and die at the end of last season. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Burnley, very, very similar. One of the worst sides we've ever seen in the league. They threw away their philosophy very, very quickly. And if they haven't replaced it with any kind of defensive ruggedness and physicality, then I don't see what they're doing. They're a mixture of everything. They're a jack of all trades, master of none. And Vincent Kompany's still in the dugout. I think they'll gamble that he'll stay at the club and get them back in the Premier League in 2 years' time, maybe. But it's a big gamble, really. Obviously picked up a decent result recently, but apart from that, I mean, it was like, I think they beat Fulham, didn't they? But apart from that, it was like, I think Sander Berge has been a real flop signing. Obviously was fantastic at Sheffield United in the Championship last season. So some of these transfers didn't make sense. They had the money to sign James Trafford for 20 million quid, and it feels like the supplementation of the squad, Redmond kicking about, it just doesn't make sense to me what Burnley are trying to do, because I think they've got owners that are relatively ambitious in the relative schemes of what Burnley can do with their stadium, with the amount of fans that they have. What can I say? I think Burnley have been, where are they? There they are. Absolutely embarrassing. On to Newcastle. Their Champions League campaign was pitiful at the end, really. The FA Cup win against Sunderland, I think, will paper over some cracks and give the club a little bit more belief than it currently has. But their record in the Premier League hasn't been great. The Liverpool loss was shocking. I mean, the amount of time they got absolutely taken to school, didn't they? They got taken back to doing their phonetic alphabet. That's how bad it was. It really was. And it's a bit like the Sheffield United comment a little bit. I think the owners at Newcastle, obviously, they're struggling a little bit probably with FFP and trying to stay within that. But, the guy's working with, what's he working with really? I mean, we like to have a bit of a sing and a dance about Dan Burn, Almiron, the Murphys of the world. The proof's in the pudding. The reason they were there in the first place with Steve Bruce getting nearly relegated is because they were those kind of players and they have been consistently. And you can rise with the tide of other players coming in, like Bruno coming in and making you better. And Isaac, I get that 1,000,000%. Nick Pope's probably made Lascelles a better centre back because of having him behind him and stuff like that before he got injured. But in reality, when the dust settles and you're looking around, you think, oh wow, I'm playing with Almiron up front. Wow. And that's why Newcastle struggled, in my opinion. I think a top half finish, getting into the European positions again, would be strong. They need to add a world-class player. Tonali is in that bracket. Isaac in that semi-world-class talent ready to go. They need to add those kind of players once or twice every transfer window, and they'll eventually level up, in my opinion. And you can see the incremental gains. If they stay with Eddie Howe, he can turn things around very, very quickly and get you firing up the league. But Newcastle might struggle at the top end, when they have to really compete with big names, with the Man Cities of the world, the Liverpools. Can they really go to 100 mil for Caicedo? Can they go for the Mudriks of the world, these kind of big talents that were touted? For example, the Dokus of the world. Can they compete with Man City with some of these transfers? Yet, they might be a way off. And that's why I said when they got taken over that they won't win a league for 10 years, at least. But if you disagree, let me know in the comments down below. We're going to put Newcastle in okay. On to Chelsea. Chelsea, there's one standout player that puts them above embarrassing. That is Cole Palmer. I'm calling him Cole for the rest of his career at Chelsea because he's a ruthless, skillful, talented, total footballer. And I love everything about Cole Palmer. I'll watch him to the day he retires or I retire from this football game because he's absolutely amazing. The little role against Luton Town was superb. It really was. But apart from that, everything around them, Fofana's injured again. The keeper's rubbish. They just signed him. Jackson, I don't rate him at all. Mudryk, don't rate him at all. Enzo, don't rate him. Caicedo, don't rate him. Conor Gallagher. Cardio Gallagher is the best player at Chelsea Football Club. That is sacrilegious. If you look at the Zolas of the world, the Frank Lampards of the world, the Essieans, Conor Gallagher isn't that guy. I'm sorry. He's a James Milner. He's a Henderson with a Thiago, with a Salah, with a Mane around him, and they don't have any of those players. So it's Conor Gallagher and Cole Palmer's kind of time at Chelsea, and that isn't enough. Mid-table is shocking for the money they've spent. They get by because the standard now, because the last season is now, it's been normalised. It's a bit like Stockholm syndrome when you kind of normalise, the kidnapped person normalises their situation, almost takes joy in it a little bit, and it's like, it's a mental condition. Chelsea should be first with the money they've spent. Easy. In this league as well, they should be 10 points clear, really. They should be 10 points clear. And the fact they're just above Bournemouth in the league, it's embarrassing. And I'll never let Chelsea fans forget it because they get through, they win it, they scrape a win against Luton Town, and people are gassing them up on Twitter and all that. All these Chelsea fans on Twitter. It's embarrassing. They're absolutely shocking. They're soft. They've got no philosophy. And the money's just, it's going to keep pouring in. Nkunku coming back is a big one as well, though. I do like Nkunku. They can build around him and Cole Palmer if they can get his injury record decent and straight. But that remains to be seen. I'm going to have to put Chelsea in the embarrassing category. Villa have been absolutely superb. One of the standout teams in the whole league. And I know they're in and around the Premier League title positions. Their performances in certain games, especially in the second half against Man United, a side that were flat, a side that had no confidence in and around the stadium, and they still gifted Man United, 3 goals, I think it was.
So the Diego Carlos made a few mistakes in that game, and Martinez as well, distribution. They don't have enough to get past Man City. They just don't. They don't have enough to get past Liverpool. But can they come third? Yeah, they can. Can they come fourth? That would be an amazing achievement in its own right as well, especially with those Europa games coming up. I think they'll lose a little bit of focus, a little bit of drive. So I think it's been an absolutely superb season for Aston Villa, and they have to go number one in my opinion. Brighton are having an underrated season because they fell off. They had a couple of dodgy results a few weeks ago. They've conceded a lot of goals this season, but you actually take a step back, right? Be really hyper objective about this, even if you are a Palace fan watching at home. And just look at Brighton Football Club. They're through their group in Europe. They're through in the FA Cup, which they did very well in last season. They spent basically no money. They've replaced Caicedo in terms of they haven't lost anything, and they've gained 100 million quid, which is transfer of the con of the century. Con of the century, it really is. They're seventh. What else do you want from Brighton? They're absolutely superb. João Pedro came from Watford. A little bit, didn't start great. I think he got 7 goals in the league this season, something like that. So, absolutely superb. And a few assists. So, they're doing very well. Brought in experience in James Milner. Still playing their brand of football. They're doing it their own way. They're doing it on their terms. And they've been absolutely superb. So, it's an absolutely superb season for Brighton. It absolutely is. Well, it's West Ham time, West Ham City connection. I absolutely love West Ham. I love Kudus, I love Alvarez, I love even Susek, and I love Kufal. They're a great side. I love David Moyes' reputation being enhanced, and I think he absolutely had a beautiful reputation before going to Man United. All the Man United pylon kind of ruined it and talked about Sociedad and Sunderland. This is a guy trying to rebuild his career after Man United let him down in the transfer market, in my opinion. He was a little bit out of his depth managerial-wise. But if they'd signed the players that he wanted, I think they would have been a little bit better off, and they would have been certainly fighting for European positions, maybe back into the Premier League title race when he was at Man United. In my opinion, I think he's a top manager. I think he's got a good chance of winning stuff with West Ham furthermore. They're still in the FA Cup as well. They've got a replay at Ashton Gate. So West Ham could... What if they win the FA Cup this season? Amazing. They're a cup side. They've got great physicality midfield. Kudus on the break. Paqueta's been instrumental. Paqueta's unbelievable. He's unbelievable. I love Paqueta. He's built a very similar setup that he had at Everton Football Club with Stephen Pienaar peeling off and Gary Cahill. The other Cahill. He's got a beautiful little setup there. I could see him there for 3, 4, 5 years. I hope the West Ham board don't ever lose their nerve on David Moyes. He'll always keep them up, and I think he'll get them that higher level that they wanted. They brought in Pellegrini because they thought he'd play beautiful football and then also win them something like a League Cup or something like that. The best way for someone for a club like West Ham to do that is to be defensively conservative and know themselves and be astute in the transfer market and be in and around it all the time. And I think West Ham will do that eventually. I think they'll win domestic honours with David Moyes. Mark my words. I'm actually going to put them in. I'm going to put them in superb. I'm just in a good mood. If you've watched this far, thank you so much. If you like the longer form content, let me know in the comments down below. We're going to go on to Brentford. These guys have lost to Sheffield United. Let's have a look. They've lost to Wolves. They've lost to Villa. They lost to Brighton. They're in a world of pain. They haven't won in 5, I think, in the Premier League. They conceded so many goals. I think it starts pretty easily. We look at David Raya, who's now on the bench for Arsenal. Well, I mean, he was in the FA Cup round. You know, Flecken's come in. I don't rate him at all. One of the worst keepers in the league. Not trying to be disrespectful, but Brentford had this approach going forward where everything gravitated like a magnet around Ivan Toney. And at the back, it felt like David Raya, everything went through him almost in terms of defensive output and kind of clearing the ball and punching things out from corners and dominating the defensive unit for Brentford. And they've lost that as well. So they've lost these two kind of bases where they can go during a game, whether they're on top of a game, whether they're chasing to try and get back in it. They've lost everything and they're a little bit soft. And I think Thomas Frank's probably the hardest period of his managerial career. And Mbuemo's to come back and Ivan Toney's to come back. But I think they need some big help from the owners in January. 1 or 2 pieces just to make sure they stay afloat in the league. Because if they get relegated, they're one of those clubs that I think they struggle to come back up again. It's a bit of a miracle they even got promoted, really. not based on merit. They deserved it, and they were in and around it for 3 or 4 years in the Championship. But it's one of them where a club like Brentford are kind of in a unicorn moment, and if things go wrong and they have to start selling players, they could drop like a house on fire. That's not the saying. But anyway, I'm going to put Brentford in poor, just because they have set incredibly good standards in the Premier League very, very recently. Man City, in and around the Premier League title race, not as close to first as Guardiola would like. Through in the Champions League, through in the FA Cup. The treble's on. The treble's on. I'm sitting here saying that. The treble is on for Man City fans. You know, City have proven we've already won 2 FA Cups with Guardiola already. So that's a big angle to talk about. The Premier League title race, we're seeing Liverpool with a thin squad. I still think they're a side to beat, and it's going to be very hard. And Arsenal have fallen off like whatever, anything you want to say. Real Madrid have got a young side. I'm not saying Man City will win a back-to-back treble, but the fact that City are in a place come middle of January, as I'm recording this, and they've got this ability to potentially win 3 again, this staying power, despite being rubbish. I think, well, not rubbish, but rubbish to the standards of City's standards in the last few years. Alvarez, Doku's been superb. I think Kovacic will certainly get a role in the deep line midfielder position. He obviously showed that against Huddersfield. Alvarez against Fluminense was absolutely fantastic. So there's some players that are coming through in Haaland and De Bruyne's kind of positions since they've been injured or are coming back from injury. Absolutely superb. The City side are hungry to still win trophies this season. So I'm going to put it in. You have to put it in great, because the Super Cup win, the Club World Cup win, being still very, very close to the leaders in the Premier League title race as well. It has to be better for City to win the Premier League, in my opinion. I think City will get there. Fulham, they won in the FA Cup. I always look at the likes of Fulham and obviously I talked about Brighton and West Ham winning domestic silver, or at least trying to do that. Obviously Brighton got to the FA Cup semi-finals last season, and Fulham won their FA Cup game. So that's good. I think there's been a lot of criticism for Fulham without Mitrovic, but Raul Jimenez has picked up a few goals. I think he's on 5 goals in the league, which I think he went. It was 24 months he didn't score a goal in the Premier League. So at least 12 months. It might have been 18 months, but one of those time frames, he didn't score. So Fulham for me, doing well. Paulini has been fantastic. I think Alex Iwobi's been very, very strong as well. So we're going to put Fulham in okay. Manchester United, 3-point United, some people call them on the streets these days. The losses to Bournemouth, the losses to City, the losses to Nottingham Forest, the losses in the Champions League. A side that are soft, a side that once the chips are down, they're really down. Emotional, lethargic, mercenaries, I'd say some of them are. Diving against Wigan Athletic, Bruno Fernandes. If Man United were a good side, if I was doing this video in 2009, I'd put them superb. I'm not trying to be biased, but they have been poor. It's not about Ineos. It's not about the owners. It's about what do the Man United players represent. And there have been some bang average players like Darren Fletcher and all these guys, Park Ji-sung, that represent Man United to the best of their ability. And some of these lads that got more talent haven't done that. It's as simple as that. We're going to wrap up with Man United. I think they've been embarrassing. I'm not even trying to wind anyone up. I think they've been really, really poor. This is Manchester United. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. But this is my Premier League tier list. If you like this content, make sure you give the video a thumbs up. And obviously subscribe to the channel. I'll do more of it.